Grateful to be here today, and again, expressing gratitude to Alan and blessings to your brother Jack. Alan, thank you for supporting IJS, and we lift you both up today. So on these very early days in the secular new year, I'm reflecting back on hosting a party over the New Year's holiday, in which I had the opportunity to have people yell out Mazel Tov, congratulations, as I dropped a glass and it shattered near my feet. And so everyone called out, Mazel Tov, congratulations, you broke the glass. And everyone hastened to help clean up, sweep up, make it safe again in the space where I had dropped this glass unceremoniously. But it made me reflect. I was thinking back on this unexpected mishap, on what it means to juggle glass, as it were, right? Or the unexpected nature of what it means when something slips out of our hand, drops off the table, and it doesn't make the fall gracefully, right? It breaks, it shatters. And what that can mean for us, perhaps as an analogy for thinking about how we go through life. And so I want to, again, thank Jordan for holding our text space and ask her to share the source sheet today, because I want to bring to you a quote from Pooja Lakshman, the author of a book called Real Self-Care. And I first discovered this quote through a podcast transcript from the Ezra Klein show through New York Times. And so some people may be familiar with that. And Jordan, I don't see it up on the screen yet, but we'll pause for a moment. I'll be reading all the sources, but I want people to be able to see it as well. Great, thank you so much. So this quote, which mentions glass and contrasts it with rubber, and you'll see where we're going with this. She says, "You need to know which of the balls you're juggling are glass and which are rubber. And so often, everything feels like glass, and that means your body is in fight or flight. You're at max capacity, and your prefrontal cortex cannot solution or problem solve. So you can't actually make larger strategic decisions when everything feels like a glass ball. You have to remove yourself from the situation, even if it's just like shutting down your laptop, leaving your office, go for a walk, delete Instagram. You have to step away and then make decisions from there. Allow yourself then to come back to the to-do list, which of these things can be rubber." So which of these things can be rubber? This is such a beautiful idea to kind of reflect on our lives and think, what are the difficult things we're holding, and we're maybe gripping them or grasping them, or being very holding them gingerly because we feel like they are glass. We feel like if they slip through our hands, if we make one wrong move, they're going to shatter, just like my champagne flute shattered on the floor beneath my feet over that party on New Year's. But what would it be like if we, with certain things in our lives, if we really stop to try to discern, what I'm holding right now, is it really glass or is it rubber? Right? What if something shifts or drops? Can it be flexible? Can it bounce? Can it take a different shape and pattern in my life than maybe what I expected? So I loved this image. Which of these things in my life can be rubber, can be bouncy, can be pliant and flexible? And so when I think about this through the lens of Jewish tradition, I think about this through this blessing that we have in the Amidah, our standing prayer that we say 3 times a day. It's the 4th blessing. It's said on the weekdays. This blessing is not a part of the Shabbat liturgy, but all of the weekdays, the 4th blessing in this prayer is acknowledging, as we say, God, you grant a person with perception and teach a person understanding. Grant us knowledge, understanding, and intellect from you. Baruch atah Adonai, who grants perception, konen hada'at. So the 4th blessing is really such a critical blessing for us because it's the point at which we say, thank you. I am grateful that I have the power to discern in my life, right? Which of these things can be rubber? How do I wake up in the morning and acknowledge that I have this incredible power to discern, to inquire, to ask, to reflect, to step back, and to think about different paradigms that I can apply in my life that can help me navigate the ins and outs of life more easily. So I find that 4th blessing of the Amidah, the weekday Amidah, is an incredibly powerful reminder that I have that power to say, is what I'm holding glass or is it rubber? And then I also was drawn to this quote from the Mishnah, the earliest collection of rabbinic literature. It dates back to about the year 200, over 2,000 years old of when it was collected and codified, in which Ben Bagbag, one of our sages, says, turn it over and turn it over, for all is in it. Now, this quote is usually said about Torah. That's what Ben Bagbag is referring to, that we take the Torah and we turn it over and over again. But I also think this is a great thing to apply to the life circumstances that are in front of it. What are the areas of discernment, or what are the glass balls and rubber balls that we're thinking, oh, we have to turn them over to discern what exactly is it that we're holding or what we're challenged by. And I also love this image of turn it over and over, because it can kind of be linked perhaps to, if it's a glass ball, we're looking at it. But if it's a rubber ball, it can bounce, right? We can turn it over and it can do things that are unexpected, unanticipated. And even though a rubber ball, we can't necessarily see through it like we'd look into a glass ball or a crystal ball, it has properties that are really powerful for us to think about in terms of how we live our lives. And for me, that flexibility is best represented in this teaching from the Talmud that I've also shared here, that one should always be as flexible as a reed and not as unyielding as a cedar. And maybe we could even play with this parallel a little bit and say, we want to be like a bouncing rubber ball and maybe less like a glass vessel. This is, and the Talmud continues, this is why a reed merited to have made from it a quill to write a Sefer Torah. I left these terms here untranslated, but I'm happy to translate. To write a Torah scroll means you have to use a specific type of quill that is flexible. It's not stiff and rigid, but that's how you create a Sefer Torah, is through this flexible instrument. And likewise for tefillin, the prayer phylacteries that we adorn our bodies with as a kinesthetic reminder of what the mitzvot are for us in our lives, how God provides us with divine lures or invitations to engage in holy acts. And also the mezuzah, the same type of scroll that is found in our tefillin, or that is a Sefer Torah is made out of, that is inside our mezuzah case and then affixed to our doors. So that tool that makes all of that possible is flexible like a reed, or bouncy like a ball, if you want to think of it that way. And as we head into our sit, I'll close with this beautiful commentary by Rabbi Rachel Nussbaum um, from the Kavanah. She is from the Kavanah Collective, I believe, in Seattle. And she's commenting on this text from the Talmud. She says, inherent in flexibility is a kind of humility, a willingness to be wrong sometimes and to do teshuvah, the act of turning back or starting over, that is a part of our Jewish tradition, and make changes or correct course. For this reason, a reed merited being the instrument for the scribal writing of our most sacred texts. And here I love this. When the wind blows, it's better to bend than to be uprooted. True strength can be found in the capacity to bend and adapt. And thank you, Jordan. You can take off the screen share. So true strength can be found in the capacity to bend and adapt. So I want to bring this rich collection of different ideas into our sit today. You might want to think about your spine. We always think of it as being in meditation, kind of elongated, but not stiff, not rigid, but more elongated and fluid, like a reed. And thinking about how do we feel any kind of flexibility or bounce in our body, even during meditation, where there's not a fixed place for our hips to be or a fixed place for our feet to be, or but that there's some kind of give, some kind of rubber a little bit in our body, and that can be a gift to us, right? To discern, there's movement here, there's flexibility. So as we take our seats with dignity, and awareness, but with this flexibility, we may even be lying down, we may be standing up, especially if you're experiencing pain in your body. This idea of moving in a way that can create flexibility and accommodation for physical pain or whatever it is our bodies experience right now is critically important to move away from the rigidity and the fixed nature that we might sometimes be drawn toward. So I invite you into this space as we let the flexibility of the reed undulate through our bodies. And as our thoughts come and go, as the sensations in our body come and go, that maybe we see that bouncing ball, the surprise of it, the unexpected nature of it, how it rolls, how it plops, and how that's reflected in our own lives. Can we discern what is a rubber ball and what is a glass ball? We'll sit for the next 12, 13 minutes or so, and then I'll bring us back together with the sound of my voice. As we come back together into this community, aware of our bodies, perhaps shifting, moving in the space even a little bit more. We ask ourselves, when we think of our lives, which of these things can be rubber? How can we discern how to best navigate? Is it glass? Is it rubber? And how can we find that true strength that's found in the capacity to bend and to adapt?
Thank you so much, Susan. Beautiful teaching and practice. Friends, let's turn now to Kaddish Yatom, to Mourner's Kaddish. And if you're saying Kaddish for someone, I invite you to put their name in the chat. If you're in the period of mourning, if you're marking a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a death, or if it's your practice to say Kaddish at this time, you're invited to unmute and please rise in body or in spirit. And I invite the community to join in support and responding together. Yitgadal ve'yitkadal ve'alma yirach malchutei Chayefon uvyomechon
נשמה רבה מלשמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל בישראל. שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום. ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Amen. May their memories be a blessing. May all who are mourning be held in comfort. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jordan, for your tech support, and thank you, Susan, so much. For those who are able to stay on for Q&A, please stay on. If you're leaving now, wishing you many blessings as you head out into the rest of your day. For those who are staying, I invite you to write any questions in the chat. It's helpful if you write the word question in bold, in caps. And there are already a couple questions. First, is it ever desirable to be or have something that is glass? And what are some examples? And actually, the other person also wrote, what do you consider to be examples of glass objects that are inflexible?
I think part of the advantage of the glass and this, taking this analogy a little bit further, is that it's transparent and you can see through it, right? So when we think of the image of especially Ben Bhagavad, where you turn something and there's this idea of there's these different ways to see and to discern in a visual way, right? So I definitely think we have glass for a reason, thank God, and that there are times, but I think I'm thinking back, I'll just share that when I hosted this party, it was actually a baby shower on New Year's Eve day. I was really fixed on having glasses at this party because I thought they would be so beautiful. And I didn't want to have disposable, kind of compostable things. I wanted glass, right? So I think I'm realizing like the irony in my breaking this, was being so attached to that. So I think that glass and its properties are really important, or if we want to think of it in terms of transparency in our own lives or the way we see or discern. But I also find that maybe sometimes I was identifying with gripping that glass too much or wanting it in a place where something more flexible would have served just as well.
Beautiful. I'm also struck by the image of elegance that you had in mind. And there is something, you talked about the glass as transparent, and that can be a very important property. There are also those qualities of refinement or elegance, or I don't know, other aspects of glass that can be really delightful, pleasurable, valuable. And also so interesting to notice when there's an attachment, as you were saying, to a particular property or quality. There's a question here about, oh, I just lost it. Here's a question. How much do you believe that fear and our turning away from the present moment makes us inflexible and too afraid to marvel at the beauty of glass?
Oh, yes, yes, and yes. Yeah, I do. I think in a certain way, going back to my somewhat, mundane example about throwing this party, is that I had a certain vision, of how I wanted things to be. And maybe inherent in that, a fear of what if it wasn't like that? Like, what if it wasn't like the picture I was painting in my mind, or for whatever reason, I wanted it to measure up in a certain way. So I think that, in terms of marveling at the glass, there's that sense of we can marvel at the glass, but at the same time, be willing to release it. I have a daughter who's a ceramicist, right? And she describes the process by which she puts hours of work into something that is breakable, puts it into the kiln, and it often doesn't make it out to the other side, right? It shatters, it breaks, the glaze bubble, like whatever happens, right? And so it's been an exercise for her in how do I be present and witness the beauty of that, with also not being attached to the outcome. So I guess for me, the fear comes from when I'm attached to an outcome, and I have a certain fixed idea of how I want things to be, and then the glass breaks. So.
Lovely. As you were guiding us with such evocative images, you were showing us how we can discern or engage in this dynamic, glass and rubber, both outside of ourselves, sort of being able to discern when that which I'm holding, is it glass, is it rubber? And you also gave that beautiful image from the Talmud of being a reed, a sense of being connected to what's within me that I'm relating to in a breakable, fragile, very careful way, or where could there be more flexibility and yielding and resilience? And what came up in the practice was when I was kind of turning toward others, those places or times when I treat somebody as breakable, I was noticing fear rising in my body, not giving them enough responsibility, like not trusting enough that they can handle something. So I'm treating them as glass. And when I sort of dropped into it in myself, I felt this sense of being fearful of my own capacities, that I can't handle this, or I'm afraid of risking. Will I break if I make a mistake, if I get it wrong? And I'm curious if you could say something about how we might shift our relationship from glass to where it's wise to do so, to more of a sense of elasticity and yielding and agility. What helps us do that?
That really resonates with me, Miriam, because I think I often go through life treating other people like they're glass. I have people in my circle of support who remind me of the resilience of other people and say, hey, you don't need to do that. I think one property of the rubber ball, which I didn't emphasize as much today, has to do with joy, right? Like when there's this resilience and flexibility and give, I'm thinking of my granddaughter, Nora, who just like when she sees a bouncing ball, she just like laughs. She just giggles. It's so fun. It's so joyful. And so I kind of aspire to bring that in how I see others, right? Like, can I view them as having that capacity that if I throw them a ball, they're going to throw it back, or, there's a certain give and flexibility. Or what happens if I throw them a ball and it bounces away? That's okay too, right? Or they're kind of like, wow, she threw a ball to me. I wasn't expecting that. So I don't know, that's a way for me to tap into like an aspirational metaphor of how I view others and also how I view myself, the joy and the spontaneity and when things are unpredictable, and to not be afraid of that.
To not be afraid. Yeah, beautiful. There's a question and comment here. Interesting contrasts, pairings. Flexible yet opaque, inflexible yet transparent. Wonder if you want to say something about that.
So interesting, because when I encountered the Ben Bagbag quote from the Mishnah, which may be very well known to some and new to others, I kept thinking about it. Oh, when you turn it over and over, you're looking at something that you can see through, or I don't know, that catches light. And then I thought how funny it was to think of this rubber ball that you would be turning it over and over. But it wouldn't be because you're seeing anything. It would be because you're maybe experimenting with how it bounces or how it feels or the size of it or how much it gives under your fingers. And for me, it was really interesting because I feel like it brought a whole new level of understanding to the Ben Bagbag quote, almost like a somatic approach. Like, no, I'm not just using my eyes to turn it over and over, but I'm using my other senses and my whole body. So I think that's so beautiful to think about the opaque nature and transparent nature and how we learn, or how we perceive that we learn from those, right? How one's very kind of could be vision centric, and the other kind of opens us up to different senses.
So many different ways of engaging and exploring. I think that's true of our practice as well. What qualities do we use to shed light on what's unfolding within? How do we meet it? How do we inquire and become curious about it without totally identifying with it and sort of closing down, making it a very tight ball or a very fragile glass? But actually, the agility is in the awareness that we bring, the curiosity that we bring to what is present.
Yeah.
There's another comment here. When my 42-year-old daughter was an infant, my husband remarked how I carried her, which I did constantly, less gently than he thought I should. I was so used to having her on my body. I had a different experience. I told him I didn't want to give her the message that she was vulnerable and breakable.
Wow. Beautiful. It's as someone who gave birth to 3 children, it is true for my experience. It was true that when this baby has been a part of your body as it grows and comes out, there's a different I know for me, there was a different relationship than for my partner who was like, wow, I have to develop a relationship with this and figure out, is it rubber or is it glass? So that's a beautiful, thank you, Nancy, for sharing that. Beautiful.
It also makes me think about how we mirror each other. And I, connected to what I was saying earlier, I think when I treat others as breakable, when I hold them in that light, sometimes they then see themselves as fragile and breakable. When I relate to others with a sense of, oh, you've got this. You might mess it up, you might fall apart, but okay, you're human, you've got this. And that's true with myself as well. When I turn toward myself as I can't do this, I'm breakable, I'm fragile, I'm vulnerable, and that's a danger, then I really grip and tighten, like glass, unyielding. When I can relate to being vulnerable not as dangerous, but as an essential quality of my humanness, and I can handle it. I've got it. I'm not going to be destroyed. Then I can access that quality that it turns out is already present within me, that resilience.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah, and beautiful thoughts continue to come in. Harris is talking about, that if what would it be if vulnerable is perhaps less breakable, right? Because we want to be vulnerable. And what you're describing, Miriam, like what you tap into is that resilient vulnerability, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we have time for one more comment, if you would like to say something about this, that there was a question about, do you think women are more likely to regard others as glass? And I'm assuming that that's not a question about essential nature, but how we've been acculturated, how many women have been acculturated.
I always hesitate to speak for all women, but I can speak for myself that I definitely have. And I do think that that's, for me, part of being a woman in terms of how I've been socialized. I also think it can be traced to our families of origin and how others around us attempted to protect people and protect themselves. And then those messages are sent. And I know I've spent a lifetime kind of trying to increase my awareness of that and to, as you said, Miriam, to remind myself that I and the people around me are actually more resilient than I might have thought.
What a beautiful note to end on. Well, thank you again so much, Susan, for leading us and teaching us. Thank you, Jordan, for your skillful tech support, and such gratitude for each of you for being here today, for being part of this community of practice.
Thank you, Miriam.
Take good care. Bye-bye.